thought I'd start with the injury list first of all. Maddison and Vardy, how are they for the weekend?
Yeah, Jamie will be out for the weekend, and James Maddison should be fine.
How long are you looking at for Jamie?
Depends. Could be next 3 to 4 weeks.
I mean, obviously, as well, going through the list, there's still Johnny out. How long are we looking for Johnny still? John Chu, Daka, is Fofana ready to return even? James Justin, how far away is he? Harvey Barnes, again, how long? And update on Ryan Bertrand as well.
Yeah, Harvey's just come back, obviously having a period out. So he's trained his first training session today with the squad, which is good news. Ryan Bertrand probably will be next week before he's back in training. But all the others will be they're still at least 3 weeks away. JJ, we just need to get some games into him. He was due to play, obviously, the game, and then he was off for 10 days or so. So he's going to be a few weeks away, I would say. But he's back training, which is great news for us. And what Wesley Fofana, we're looking into February with him.
Just with the nature of the injuries, and thinking of for Johnny, for Sionchu, for Daka, for Jamie as well, what kind of a warning again should that be for player welfare at this time of year?
Well, it's very important. I heard Jordan speak out last week on it, and I thought he was absolutely right. And I understood where Sean was coming from in terms of the welfare of players, but I'm pretty sure Jordan would have been talking more about the physical needs of players. Because if you're asking a player to play when they're fatigued, which a lot of these players are, then there's a high risk of injury. And if you're playing a player who's fatigued, who's totally committed, but because of his tiredness, he's overstretching in the game, and he does his ACL, and he's out for a number of months, which could then disrupt his career, then that's player welfare. So that's what we're talking about, and I think that's what Jordan's trying to say. Players will play every day of the week. You see our boys on the 26th and the 28th playing. Of course, they will do it. They're great guys, they're great people, and most footballers, they want to play football. But if there's not a voice for them speaking out to help them and support them, then it's their careers and their livelihoods. It's in danger. So for me, we played the 26th to 28th. We had an amazing result on the 28th, but it still doesn't make it right, in my opinion. I think it's something that should be looked at with regards to players, And we look at it this month. We've missed a couple of games, and there's maybe talk of our games being rearranged for January, which I find ludicrous, really, when you consider the period that we've come off in terms of November and December, and there's dates fixed later on in the calendar for where games can be played. So I'm only hoping that the Premier League aren't going to look to then force players in to play even more games in this month, especially when you have an African Nations Cup as well, where you're losing players. So I think that voice that Jordan talked about last week, I totally have empathy for what he was saying from the playing perspective, and I think that's what he was talking about.
Do you reckon your voice will actually be heard by the Premier League when it comes to rearranging those fixtures? Will you have any say at all as a manager?
Well, currently to this time, I would say no, because we've had various meetings, but the football doesn't seem to come into it. It seems to be more about getting the games played and what implications that has financially. I think as football coaches and managers, we're more worried about the welfare of a player, and we're talking the physical welfare as well as the mental welfare. But like what I said earlier, I hope that will be taken into consideration, especially in this month, January, where there are more demands on players, and this schedule that we've just come through. It would seem, it wouldn't seem right to be then looking to add more fixtures into that whenever there's scheduled games to be played later on in the year.
And you kind of touched on it, Brendan. I just wonder how you feel as well when that victory over Liverpool is held up as kind of an example as to what can happen when you just get on with things and play the games.
Yeah, we lose our striker. Who's a very, very important part of our team for maybe up to a month. That's the result of it. Yeah, the result was amazing, and that's down to the resilience of the players. You know, their mentality, their drive, their commitment, their desire, everything else. Yeah, it's held up. It was an amazing result, and in fairness to Jurgen and his players, they acknowledged that afterwards. And I think it was because of knowing that the extent of what we'd had to gone through on the Sunday, playing Manchester City and then their game. So to win that and keep a clean sheet was amazing. But it doesn't for me then make everything else right in the bigger picture. You know, to play with the intensity of the modern game and with a COVID situation where players are missing. It's tough enough, these games, in a season where there's no COVID and there's not players missing, 6, 7, 8 players missing through that. And then your other players are having to play more. But to then have to do it over this period and maybe in January, it doesn't make it right.
Will you even be able to fill your bench this weekend?
Yeah, but that's another issue. That's a different issue, because I've always been one that promotes young players. And I'd love to have, and like we've done, we've put young players on the bench. But the other issue around that is you bring a young player in, if he's sat on your bench, even though he may not be ready, he's deemed available to play in the most competitive league in the world, which isn't right. So yeah, well, listen, we'll have players to go on the bench for sure, but it is another issue around the availability and what requirements need to be met in order to field the team.
In terms of a rethink, is it schedule that's the main thing? Do we need to look at the reintroduction of the 5 substitutions? I know you touched on it with us the other week as regards to 5 subs. Yeah,
100%. I think that, for me, in my opinion, the possibility to do that would really help teams. Some managers may not think that's the case, but I can only talk from our position. The 5 substitutes definitely would help.
And imagine there's a certain amount of frustration that we're still talking about this, Brendan, as well, when you'll be looking to focus on the importance of following up that win against Liverpool now.
Yeah, but that's what we will do. We'll not get too bogged down with it. And like I've said all along before, Vinny, we're not going to use all the injuries and everything else as an excuse. We get on with it. And for now, like I said, we had a great win the other night, but now we've got to back it up at home on Saturday and look to put in another very good performance.
And finally then for me, Brendan, as well, after such a good win, what is the message to the players in terms of making sure that they do refocus and their minds are on that job in hand now to build on that win?
Yeah, well, they will do. They're great guys, and that focus and concentration is very, very important, in particular in this period where you are playing, recovering. We've at least got a couple of days that they can recover, and we can do a final preparation tomorrow, and they'll be ready for the weekend. The players are available and fit enough to play. We'll be ready to take on the challenge.
Good stuff, and all the best for the new year.
Thanks, Vinny. You too.
Take care.
Cheers.
Thanks, Vinny. We'll move to Naz from Premier League.
Hi, Brendan. You okay?
Hi, Naz.
Brendan, we could continue the conversation with regards to the schedule and the 5 subs for all afternoon. I want to focus on your young players that have been absolutely magnificent, and how pleasing is it for you to see this conveyor belt? We've seen Hamza and Harvey, and then the other night, arguably, Kiernan and Luke were the 2 best players on the pitch for you. For the future and the fact that the setup you've got at Leicester, it's great, isn't it, to see those youngsters come through and make it through the ages and into that first team?
Yeah, but all the players past are different. You look at Kiernan's, his was different to Luke. Luke virtually trained with us, and then he was in playing, and he's played just over 40 games or something now, and each game he's getting better and better. And he'll have come out of this Christmas period with a huge boost of confidence, playing to the level that he has done. And I can see him maturing and growing and developing. So he's only going to get better. Kiernan, I thought, was sensational the other night in a big game. The energy that he's produced, I've wanted to, along the line, give him a breather, but because of our situation, it's been difficult to do that. but the energy levels that he showed, having played on Sunday as well against Manchester City and done very well, to play the level that he played against Liverpool was absolutely brilliant. So I'm delighted for him. He's had to be patient to come into the team, but he's shown already that he's going to be a very, very important player for Leicester City now, but also in the future. And I'm delighted for him because he's a great lad who wants to maximise his career.
How difficult is it to prepare then for Norwich? Because similar to yourself, Dean has got so many sort of problems, injuries, and I think the team he put out the other day against Crystal Palace is arguably nowhere near what his first team would be if he had all those players available. Is it tough to sort of prepare when you're kind of going into the unknown with the opposition a little?
Not really. No, Dean's teams have always been very, very well coached. Whatever club he's been at, very well coached. They'll always play with determination. A really good organisation. So whatever team he will put out will be exactly that. So for us as coaches and managers, you just have to focus on what you can control, which is the process and the performance of the team. And whatever else comes out, you have to try and ignore that, really. And that's been our focus, just getting ready for the weekend.
How difficult will January be with, obviously, you're losing 4 players to the Africa Cup of Nations, the injuries you've got? Is it likely that in terms of the window, you may have to be busier than you would have expected with all the stuff that's happening with COVID, the injuries and the AFCON players that won't be available to you for a month?
Well, it's something that we will be looking at. We've obviously had meetings leading up to January, but now it takes on a different focus with, like you say, the injuries that we've had, and from the weekend after that, having one fit available centre half. So these are things that we all have to look at. But we also recognise that money doesn't grow on trees, and we have to maximise the talent that we have, and then look at it from there.
I just want to ask you finally, I've asked a couple of managers in the last few days is this the toughest time as a Premier League manager, Brendan, dealing with the fixture schedule, dealing with COVID, dealing with the fact that there's no 5 subs, dealing with everything that's going on sort of this last few weeks and months? Is it the toughest time to be a Premier League manager, or have you had tougher periods in the past?
Not just Premier League managers. You have to respect every coach and manager in this period. We're obviously very privileged to work in the Premier League, but there's lots of managers and coaches throughout the country who don't have the same privileges. But what is a commonality with us all is that this period is tough in a normal situation, just because of the turnover of games, and it's also it's a time that we love as well. But the added complication, of course, this season has been the COVID outbreak and the variants around that. So that has really doubled the complication, of everything, because it has a knock-on effect. You can't recover players. Players are having to play more than you would like, risking then greater possibilities of injuries. And of course, then if players are in quarantine for in isolation for 7 to 10 days, then if you have a number of those, then it makes it really, really difficult. So, but yeah, it's always a challenging time of the year, and of course this year is no different.
Thanks, Brendan. Best of luck for the weekend, and Happy New Year.
Thanks, Naz. You too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Naz. We'll move on to Ian Abrahams from TalkSport.
Thank you very much. Hi, Brendan. Happy New Year.
You too, Ian.
Great win the other night.
Yeah.
The schedule hasn't really changed. Pitches have got better. The amount of science around the sport of football has got better. And yet all managers seem to be having a little bit more of a moan this season about the fixture list. And I think, do you understand why? I mean, can you explain maybe why?
Yeah, listen, the games, the pitches are better, but the games are faster. There's more football for players. The intensity of the game is greater. And like I say, you then, I'm sure you recognise as well, Moose, that having COVID puts a far, far greater strain on the health and of your squad. Listen, it's a period of time that we all love and want to play games. You know, if you're playing on a Sunday and a Wednesday, okay, there's a big difference in that than playing on a Sunday and a Tuesday. And like I said, you add in the complications of COVID and the variants. Then when your squad is really hampered at the toughest time of the season, then of course that is why a manager will give his opinion on it. So we all want to play football. You know, that's what we love, the coaches, the managers, the players. But there comes a point, I've always said it, you know, the players aren't robots. They're not robots. And people think because they paid a lot of money that they should be able to just turn out and play every single day of the week. That's not the case. You know, the guys that are in the main at all levels, whether it's Premier League right the way through, all football players, they play for the love of the game. And of course, some get remunerated very, very well. But there's still a physicality required. There's still a demand physically, mentally. And not only remember, these players are getting exposed then. You know, there's that exposure because people will be quick to criticise them if they're not running and they're not sprinting. You know, so it's right what you say, but there's circumstances and mitigating circumstances as well that allows an opinion to be made.
But with COVID, COVID's going to be here for I'm no doctor, but it's probably going to be here for a long time, if not forever. How do we change? Do we have to change the fixture list then going forward from next year? Because we can't have every season the raft of matches being called off that have been called off. We've seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, I think over time, it's a little bit of the unknown for the experts, and I'm no medical expert, but I would say that this time next year, then of course there'll be a lot more awareness of how to deal with it. You know, you'll see that players maybe don't have to go into quarantine. You know, we've had players diagnosed with COVID with this variant, and they feel fine, but they've had to be out. You know, so I'm sure over the coming months, the scientists and the professors and the medical experts will then find what and how we can deal with it better. But I think it's because it's the unknown. It's been difficult.
Let's talk about football. Obviously, with Jamie Vardy being out and Daka being out, the game live on TalkSport on Saturday. Do you need me to bring my boots? I mean, have you got enough strikers or?
Yeah, we'll just bring them just in case, Moose. But I'm not even sure I could find the place for you on the bench.
You've got enough strikers.
Or any player for that matter.
You've definitely got enough strikers then. You're not too worried about. I mean, you're facing a team that are struggling to score goals. And, you know, I mean, it would suggest recently that if you get 1 or 2, you're probably going to be in a good position in the match.
Well, again, you're probably writing the story before the game. You know, so every game is a tough challenge, no matter who you're playing in the Premier League. And whatever team we'll put out, we'll look to give it our best to get the result.
My last question is about Kasper Schmeichel. You've probably been asked about him since you've been at Leicester a million times. I thought the other night he was, as usual, fantastic. Do you think he's as good as his dad, better than his dad? And, I mean, just give me an idea of where you think he stands, even in how good he is within his family, let alone within Premier League history.
Well, no, it's always, for me, it's an unfair comparison because, you know, Kasper, with all due respect, has never played in the teams that his father's played in. His father was obviously, of course, one of the greats of the Premier League history. So, and obviously had a super successful career. In his own right, Kasper is having that as well. You know, he's, you know, the caps he's had for Denmark. You know, he's a Premier League winner, an FA Cup winner. He's won championships further down our pyramid as well. Number of games that he's played, his commitment to the game, his desire to be the best he can be. So he's carved out a fantastic career and has still got a number of years left in him. So, and like I said, you're not really judged at the end of your career. So, but for me, he's been absolutely brilliant. I can only talk personally from the first day I walked in here. Outstanding goalkeeper, but off the pitch, a good man as well, and who really drives other players to be the best that they can be. So it's his own story. It's obviously been held up beside his father's. It's always going to be difficult, but he in his own right is proven to be a top class goalkeeper. Thanks, Miss.
Okay, Owen from Radio Leicester, please.
Hi, Brendan. Hope you're okay.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that Jamie Vardy was going to be out for what seems like you said 3 weeks now. What exactly is that injury for him at the moment, Brendan?
Hamstring.
Hamstring. Okay.
Yeah.
Was that in the challenge with, I think, Joel Matip on Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay.
He wasn't sure whether it was that or he'd felt a sort of pain there, but you could see he could sort of run on and soldier on, which he wanted to do. But yeah, the scan is showing up as that, so it could be 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay. That obviously with Daka and Iheanacho both going to the African Cup of Nations might leave you a little short of strikers at this moment in time, especially within January. In terms of, you spoke about being creative in your team selections before with central defenders. Does that have to be the case around these times, around fixture congestion, African Cup of Nations, COVID? Is it all about sort of manager creativity at this moment?
Yeah, I think it's firstly Patson won't be going. So Patson, even though he's not fit, but he'll stay and hopefully, within the next 2 to 3 weeks we'll be back again. But yeah, you're always looking at finding the solution. As I said, of course you want all the players available and to have the stronger squad to pick from. But if they're not, then let's find a way. So that'll be the case over these coming weeks.
When do you lose the players, Brendan, for the African Cup of Nations? I know it's Ndidi, Amati, Mendy, and Iheanacho. Is there a set date where they all go, or is it kind of staggered?
Yeah, they'll be gone after the weekend. So they'll be available for Saturday's game, and then after that they'll be gone.
How important are days between games over the next few weeks? Clearly, you said about maybe some games might be scheduled in, but at the moment, the way the fixture schedule is in January, it's sort of one game sort of every weekend and not too many midweek games in there as well. But how important are those days in terms of training days for you? Because I can't imagine you've had many of those over the last 2-3 weeks.
Well, over the last 2 to 3 months, there hasn't been many training days because of European football and the cup competitions. So I think January as a month would be a great month for a multitude of reasons. The recovery of players first and foremost after everything that they've been through, and also the opportunity to work on the training field, which is always a top priority for myself and the staff. To look at areas that we can need reinforcing and development, and especially if we have to be creative with the team and find different solutions.
You've always said that winning after winning is kind of the toughest part of after the internet, so the next game after you win a game. And I wonder about the momentum that the side can maybe take from the performance against Liverpool, but also the fans as well, and the way that King Power Stadium was sort of rocking the other night. Does that sort of fan-led momentum happen? Do the squad feel that going into the next game?
Yeah, but I think if you sense the atmosphere the other night, it was amazing. And I mean, the supporters are like that. Like I said a number of weeks back, when they're like that, then the players feed off that because they really transferred that energy from the stands onto the field, and the players felt that support, and that's why there was that great synergy at the end between the players and the supporters. A great night. They played a huge part in that. And like I said, in every game, whether it's Liverpool, Norwich, whoever, they will play a huge role for us going forward.
Finally, from me, Brendan, what have you made to Norwich over the last few weeks under Dean Smith, and the way that maybe he's changed a certain few things at Norwich, and I suppose an uptake in performances as well? What have you made of his time there so far?
Yeah, I think it's been tough the last few weeks for him because of player availability. But it's certainly, I've seen the Manchester United game and I thought they were excellent in the game. And knowing Dean as well as I do, and knowing what he's a fantastic manager and coach, from back when he was at Walsall, seeing the teams he put together there, how they played football, then going to Brentford and what he and also what he did there in Aston Villa. So I know that his teams will always be really well organised. They'll play with an energy, they'll play with a spirit, and they'll always be very, very difficult to play against. So that's the blueprint of his teams, and I would expect no different at the weekend.
Brendan, thank you very much. Happy New Year and good luck on Saturday.
You too. Thanks, Owen.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Owen. We'll take one from Carl at Press Association before we go into the written section.
Hi, Brendan. Just a quick one from me. Just go back to Vardy's injury. We know he complained of a tight hamstring in the cup game at Liverpool. Is his injury? Do you attribute his injury now to having to play this packed schedule and having to play when he maybe should have been rested?
Well, I think the fatigue element in that combination of games has probably led to it. But yeah, obviously he felt it in the game at Liverpool in the cup game. And if you saw that game, you could see the last half hour he was hindered in his performance. But he felt he could play on, and obviously we couldn't make any more changes. We didn't involve him at the weekend to give him that sort of maximum rest, even though he was on the bench. But he was never really going to be available to play. And then obviously the other night he just felt it towards the end of the game. So, but listen, I just think that sort of combination of games that we've had, and like I say, I suppose the recovery time really has made it difficult for him. But listen, players will pick up. It's not the only reason. Players will pick up injuries, whether it was COVID or not, or sometimes it's just something that can happen. So, but yeah, it's just a difficult period for players, especially for recovery time.